The first story. The Marauder's final message. The flickering torchlight of Hogwarts Castle cast long shadows across the Gryffindor common room one chilly autumn evening. Harry Potter sat hunched over the Marauder's map, its familiar parchment spread across his knees. Ron Weasley sprawled on a nearby armchair, munching on a chocolate frog, while Hermione Granger pored over a thick tome titled Advanced Charm Work. The trio had grown accustomed to the map's quirks over the years, its ability to reveal every soul wandering the castle's halls, but tonight, something was different. As Harry traced his finger along the inked corridors, new lines began to shimmer into existence, sketching hidden pathways and chambers no one had ever seen before. Rooms unmarked in any history book, tunnels twisting into the unknown. Then, in the center of the parchment, a phrase scrawled itself in elegant, looping script. One last mischief remains. Curiosity sparked in Harry's green eyes, though a flicker of caution tempered it. Ron sat up, crumbs tumbling from his shirt, his freckled face alight with intrigue. Hermione closed her book with a decisive snap, her brow furrowing as she leaned over the map. The words pulsed faintly as if daring them to follow. The trio exchanged no words, none were needed. With wands in hand and the map clutched tightly, they slipped out of the common room, the fat lady's portrait grumbling sleepily behind them. The map guided them through Hogwarts' labyrinthine corridors, past snoring portraits and beneath the watchful gaze of suits of armor. The pathways it revealed shifted and twisted, leading them toward the 7th floor, near the Room of Requirement. There, behind a tapestry of dancing trolls, a section of wall shimmered oddly in the torchlight. Harry pressed his hand against it, and the stone gave way, revealing a narrow passage. The air inside was cool and musty, thick with the scent of forgotten things. At the passage's end stood a small, circular room, its walls etched with faint scratches and scrawls. In the center rested a wooden chest, its surface weathered and covered in faded messages, jokes, taunts, and signatures from the Marauders. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin. But one name was conspicuously absent: Peter Pettigrew's. The chest was locked, its lid sealed with a charm that resisted Hermione's best unlocking spells. Ron tapped it with his wand, half expecting it to spring open, but it remained stubbornly shut. Harry noticed a faint glow beneath the lid's edge and, with a flick of his wand, whispered an incantation Sirius had once taught him. The chest creaked open, revealing a single item, half a letter, its edges charred as if torn in haste. The handwriting was unmistakably James Potter's, bold and slanting. The words spoke of a prank gone terribly wrong, a creation of the Marauders that had spiraled out of control. It hinted at something buried deep within Hogwarts, something meant to stay hidden forever. But the letter ended abruptly, the second half lost to time, or so it seemed. The map flared to life again, its ink swirling to reveal a new destination, a tunnel beneath the castle accessible only through a trapdoor in the dungeons. The trio descended, their footsteps echoing in the damp, stone-lined passage. Cobwebs clung to the walls, and the air grew colder with every step. At the tunnel's end they found a hidden dungeon, its iron door engraved with the Marauders' initials J, S, R and a faint, scratched-out P. Inside, the air thrummed with magic, wild and unstable. A pedestal stood at the room's center, cradling a glowing orb that pulsed with a sickly green light. This, they realized, was the enchanted prank James had warned of, a spell meant to be harmless, a dazzling display of chaos to delight their younger selves. But Pettigrew had tampered with it, twisting its magic into something dark and dangerous. Frightened by their own creation, the Marauders had sealed it here, swearing never to speak of it again. As the trio studied the orb, the dungeon trembled. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls, and the castle above groaned as if straining under an unseen weight. Hermione's sharp mind pieced it together first. The magic had begun to leak, seeping into Hogwarts' foundations. The shifting corridors, the strange echoes in the halls, it was all connected. If left unchecked, the spell could unravel the castle itself, collapsing centuries of magic into ruin. The orb's seal, a complex web of runes, bore the Marauder's signature flair, brilliant, reckless, and nearly impossible to break. Ron paced nervously, his shadow flickering in the orb's eerie glow, while Harry's scar prickled, though he couldn't say why. Hermione traced the runes with her finger, muttering under her breath as she unraveled their meaning. The seal required a countercharm, but breaking it would release the spell's full power, a risk the Marauders had feared too great to take. As she worked, the orb flared, and the dungeon filled with a shimmering mist. From the haze emerged ghostly figures. James Potter, his hair as messy as Harry's. Sirius Black, grinning with roguish charm. And Remus Lupin, his face lined with quiet concern. Their voices echoed as one, a spectral recording etched into the seal. They warned of the spell's danger, of the chaos Pettigrew had unleashed within it. The message was clear: to tamper with the seal was to court disaster. Yet the trio had no choice. Hogwarts' survival hung in the balance. Harry stared at his father's image, a pang of longing tightening his chest. Ron clenched his wand, determination hardening his features. Hermione's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. The key, she realized, lay in Pettigrew's meddling. The Marauder's original spell had been pure, a masterpiece of mischief. Wormtail's interference had corrupted it. If they could strip away his clumsy enchantments, the prank might collapse harmlessly as it was meant to. She directed Harry and Ron, their wands moving in unison. Together they cast a series of precise counterspells, peeling back layers of dark magic like unraveling a tangled thread. The orb pulsed violently, the dungeon shaking as the seal began to crack. In a final desperate moment, Harry channeled a burst of raw magic, his wand blazing with light. The orb shattered, and the dungeon erupted in a whirlwind of color, flashes of the Marauder's intended prank, a dazzling array of sparks and laughter that faded as quickly as it came. The walls groaned, then buckled, collapsing inward in a cascade of stone and dust. The trio stumbled back into the tunnel, coughing as the debris settled. Above, the castle's tremors ceased, its ancient magic stabilizing once more. The threat was gone, the prank sealed away forever beneath the rubble. Back in the corridor, Harry unfolded the Marauder's map, its edges singed from the ordeal. The ink shimmered one last time, tracing a final message in golden script across the parchment: mischief managed. The words lingered for a moment, then faded, leaving the map blank once more. Ron let out a shaky laugh, brushing dust from his hair. Hermione tucked a stray curl behind her ear, a satisfied smile tugging at her lips. Harry folded the map carefully, a quiet pride settling over him. The Marauder's legacy had tested them, but they had proven themselves worthy, not just of the map, but of the mischief it carried. And somewhere in the echoes of Hogwarts halls, the spirits of James, Sirius, and Remus surely grinned. The second story. The Lost Horcrux. The wind howled across the jagged cliffs of Azkaban, carrying with it the faint tang of salt and despair. Harry Potter stood in the shadow of the prison's crumbling towers, his cloak whipping around him, his scar a faint ache against his forehead. Years had passed since Voldemort's defeat, and the wizarding world had begun to heal, yet some wounds lingered, buried deep. That night, he had come to interrogate a dying Death Eater, Alaric Rosier, whose skeletal frame rattled with every breath. The old man's eyes gleamed with a strange fervor as he rasped a cryptic confession. He didn't know about the last one. Before Harry could press further, a flash of green light streaked from the darkness, silencing Rosier forever. The spell had come from nowhere, its caster unseen, but the message was clear: someone wanted this secret dead and buried. Harry lingered at the scene, his wand glowing faintly as he scanned the shadows. Rosier's words gnawed at him: a last Horcrux, unknown even to Voldemort himself? The idea seemed impossible, yet doubt crept into his mind. He needed answers, and for that he turned to an unlikely ally, Draco Malfoy. The Malfoy heir had spent years unraveling the dark threads of his family's past, a quiet penance for sins not entirely his own. When Harry tracked him down in a dimly lit Nocturne Alley shop, Draco's pale face tightened with suspicion, but curiosity flickered in his gray eyes. With a curt nod, he agreed to help, driven by his own need to sever the Malfoy name from Voldemort's legacy once and for all. Their uneasy partnership began with a single lead, a whispered legend Draco recalled from childhood, overheard in the shadowed halls of Malfoy Manor. It spoke of Voldemort's youth, a time when he toyed with forbidden magic, experimenting with ways to cheat death beyond the Horcruxes he later perfected. The tale pointed to Azkaban, not the prison's guarded cells but a forgotten vault, sealed off decades ago, its existence erased from Ministry records. The journey took them across stormy seas, the boat rocking beneath a sky heavy with clouds. When they reached the island, Draco's Slytherin cunning guided them past ancient wards, his wand tracing patterns Harry barely understood. Deep beneath the prison's foundations they found it, a rusted iron door, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly in the gloom. The vault creaked open, revealing a chamber thick with dust and silence. At its center stood an enchanted mirror, its frame blackened as if scorched by fire, its glass rippling like liquid silver. Harry approached, his reflection distorted into something unrecognizable, eyes too sharp, a smile too cruel. The mirror didn't show the present, it unveiled glimpses of memories that never were. Twisted scenes flickered across its surface. Voldemort laughing in triumph, a younger Draco bowing at his feet, Harry struck down by a curse that never landed. The truth unraveled slowly, pieced together by Draco's reluctant knowledge and Harry's relentless determination. This was Voldemort's failed Horcrux, an experiment from his early years, an attempt to split his soul into a non-living object. The spell had faltered, unable to anchor his essence fully, but the mirror retained echoes of his mind, spawning distorted, ghost-like versions of the Dark Lord that lingered in its depths. As they studied the artifact, the air shifted, a cold, predatory stillness that set Harry's nerves on edge. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in black, their face obscured by a hood. One of Voldemort's old followers, a zealot who had tracked the same legend, stepped forward, wand raised. Their voice was a hiss of desperation, their intent clear, to use the mirror's trapped echoes to resurrect their fallen master. The vault erupted into chaos, spells flashing like lightning in the dark. Harry dodged a jet of red light, his own wand blazing with a shield charm, while Draco darted to the mirror, his pale hands trembling as he traced its runes. In the struggle, the enemy's curse struck the glass, and a ripple of dark energy surged forth. Draco stumbled, his body yanked forward as if pulled by invisible hands, vanishing into the mirror's false reality. Inside that warped world, Draco faced a nightmare, a version of Voldemort not quite real yet terrifyingly alive. The figure loomed, its serpentine features sharper than memory, its voice a venomous whisper that clawed at Draco's mind. Outside, Harry battled the cloaked adversary, their duel a whirlwind of light and shadow. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he parried a killing curse, his focus split between the fight and the mirror. He saw Draco's silhouette flicker within the glass, locked in a struggle against the phantom. Time was slipping away, the vault's walls trembled, the mirror's magic destabilizing the ancient stone. With a surge of resolve, Harry broke free, lunging toward the artifact. His wand slashed downward, a single piercing spell tearing through the air. Reducto! The mirror shattered, its fragments exploding outward in a storm of silver and smoke. The false Voldemort dissolved into nothingness, and Draco collapsed to the floor, gasping, his platinum hair streaked with dust. The cloaked figure shrieked, their plan undone, and fled into the collapsing vault, vanishing beneath a cascade of rubble. Silence fell, heavy and absolute, broken only by the distant crash of waves against Azkaban's cliffs. Harry knelt beside Draco, offering a hand. The Slytherin hesitated, then took it, pulling himself to his feet. His face was pale, his eyes haunted, but something had shifted, a weight lifted, a shadow banished. The last echoes of Voldemort's influence were gone, destroyed with the mirror's ruin. The boat rocked gently as they returned to the mainland, the night sky clearing to reveal a scattering of stars. Draco stood at the bow, staring into the distance, his posture rigid yet somehow lighter. Harry watched from the stern, the wind tugging at his unruly hair. No words passed between them, but the air held a quiet understanding and unspoken truce, perhaps even the faintest glimmer of respect. When they parted ways on the shore, Draco's wand hand twitched as if to offer something, a gesture, a farewell, but he turned instead, disappearing into the mist. Harry lingered, gazing at the horizon, the weight of the night settling into his bones. The lost Horcrux was no more, its secrets buried forever, and with it, a chapter of the past finally closed. The third story. The Trial of the Elder Wand. The air hung heavy with mist over the grounds of Hogwarts, the castle's silhouette a jagged shadow against the dawn sky. Harry Potter stood alone before Dumbledore's white marble tomb, his breath fogging in the chill. Years had passed since the war, yet the weight of the Elder Wand lingered in his memory, a relic of power he had chosen to hide rather than wield. That morning, however, unease had drawn him here. A mysterious wizard had appeared in Hogsmeade the night before, cloaked in shadow, his voice sharp with accusation as he claimed to be the wand's rightful master. Harry had brushed it off as bravado, but doubt gnawed at him. Now, as he approached the tomb, wand in hand, the unease deepened into dread. With a flick of his wrist, the tomb's lid shifted, revealing the Elder Wand nestled atop Dumbledore's resting place. It gleamed pristine, untouched by time, yet something felt off. Harry lifted it, the familiar would cool against his palm and cast a simple spell. The light that flared was dim, hesitant, nothing like the wand's former strength. His heart sank. Footsteps crunched behind him, and Minerva McGonagall emerged from the mist, her tartan robes billowing slightly, her sharp eyes narrowing as she joined him. She took the wand, her fingers tracing its length with the precision of a scholar. Her verdict came swiftly: this was no Deathly Hallow. The wand in the tomb was a replica, flawless in appearance but hollow in power. The real Elder Wand had been stolen. The revelation ignited a spark of urgency in Harry, tempered by McGonagall's steely resolve. Together they set out to reclaim the wand, its faint magical signature their only guide. In the headmistress's office, McGonagall unfurled ancient scrolls and tapped her wand against a crystal orb, coaxing threads of silver light to weave a trail. The signature led beyond Hogwarts into the hidden corners of the wizarding world, to a secret society of wand makers, a clandestine group rumored to dwell beneath Diagon Alley. Known only in whispers, they were obsessed with crafting the perfect wand, blending artistry with ambition. Harry and McGonagall descended into the underbelly of London, navigating twisting tunnels lit by flickering lanterns, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and molten metal. The society's lair was a cavernous workshop, its walls lined with racks of wands, each pulsing faintly with latent magic. At its heart stood a figure hunched over a workbench, his hands trembling as he carved runes into ebony. The wand makers parted as Harry and McGonagall approached, their eyes wary but curious. From their reluctant admissions a story emerged. One among them had hunted the Elder Wand for decades, believing its power could be unraveled, replicated, even surpassed. Clues pointed to a name: Orpheus Crane, an elderly wizard whose past intertwined with legend. In his youth, Crane had dueled Gellert Grindelwald, surviving by sheer luck, and the encounter had sparked an obsession with the Deathly Hallows that consumed his life. The trail led them to a crumbling manor on the edge of Dartmoor, its windows dark, its grounds choked with thorns. Harry pushed open the rusted gates, McGonagall at his side, her wand glowing steadily. Inside, the air thrummed with power, a resonance Harry recognized instantly. In the manor's great hall they found Crane, an old man with wild white hair and eyes burning with fervor. The Elder Wand rested in his gnarled hand, its tip sparking faintly as he turned to face them. His presence radiated defiance, his posture that of a man who had waited a lifetime for this moment. He had stolen the wand from Dumbledore's tomb, convinced that he, not Harry, was its true heir, a master who would wield it as it deserved, not bury it in obscurity. Harry stepped forward, his own wand raised, the air crackling with tension. Crane's lips curled into a sneer as he brandished the Elder Wand, its power surging in a wave of light that shook the manor's foundations. Dust rained from the ceiling, and McGonagall steadied herself, her sharp gaze fixed on the duel unfolding. Crane's spells were fierce, torrents of flame and shadow that forced Harry to weave and dodge, his own magic a steady counterpoint. Yet something faltered in Crane's assault, the Elder Wand hesitated, its light flickering as if resisting his command. Harry felt it too, a pull deep in his chest, the wand's loyalty tethered to him still, forged in the moment he had disarmed Draco Malfoy all those years ago. The duel reached its crescendo as Crane unleashed a blast of raw energy, the Elder Wand glowing white-hot. Harry met it with a single, precise spell, Expelliarmus, his signature move honed by instinct and resolve. The Elder Wand wavered, then tore free from Crane's grasp, arcing through the air to land in Harry's outstretched hand. Crane staggered, his strength spent, and collapsed to his knees, his breath ragged. His eyes dimmed as he stared at the floor, his obsession unraveling in defeat. The manor grew still, the echoes of magic fading into silence. McGonagall approached, her expression a mix of sternness and pity, her hand resting briefly on Harry's shoulder. Harry turned the Elder Wand over in his hands, its power thrumming beneath his touch. It was his once more, undeniably, yet its weight felt heavier than ever. McGonagall's voice had long urged caution, her wisdom a quiet refrain. Such power invited ruin, its legacy a chain of bloodshed stretching back centuries. He glanced at her, her lined face illuminated by the wand's faint glow, and saw the unspoken agreement in her eyes. With a steadying breath, he raised the wand high, then brought it down against the stone floor. A sharp crack split the air, and the elder wand shattered, its fragments scattering like ash. A pulse of magic rippled outward, then dissipated, leaving only silence. Crane remained slumped, his head bowed, a broken man stripped of his dream. Harry and McGonagall left him there, stepping out into the cool night. The moor stretched wide before them, the stars piercing through the clouds. Harry's shoulders relaxed, a burden lifted at last. McGonagall adjusted her spectacles, a faint hint of approval softening her stern features. The Elder Wand was gone, its dangerous legacy ended, not hidden, not wielded, but destroyed. As they operated back to Hogwarts, the wind carried away the last whispers of its power, lost to the dark expanse of the night. The fourth story. The Vanishing Vault. The golden glow of Gringotts Wizarding Bank dimmed under an air of unease one crisp autumn morning. Goblins scurried through the marble halls, their usual sharpness replaced by a frantic edge. An entire vault had vanished, not breached, not looted, but erased from existence. No records remained in the ledgers, no traces lingered in the cavernous depths below. It was as if the vault had never been. The goblins, their pride shaken, turned to two unlikely saviors, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. Harry stood in the grand foyer, his dark hair tousled, his green eyes scanning the chaos, while Ron shifted beside him, his lanky frame dwarfed by the towering columns. The goblins explained in hushed tones that the missing vault had belonged to Eldrick Thorne, a reclusive wizard who vanished centuries ago, leaving behind only rumors of strange magic. Suspecting a curse too potent for their own skills, they tasked the pair with unraveling the mystery. Harry and Ron descended into Gringotts' subterranean tunnels, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. The goblins had provided a small enchanted orb that pulsed faintly, attuned to the vault's lingering magical residue. It led them past rows of numbered doors, their iron surfaces glinting in the torchlight, and into a forgotten passage where the walls shimmered unnaturally. There, a vault flickered into view, its edges blurred, phasing in and out like a mirage. Harry reached out, his fingers brushing the cool metal, only for it to dissolve beneath his touch before solidifying again. Ron's wand glowed as he traced the air, his freckled face set with determination. Inside they found a single object, a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed and brittle, bearing the spidery script of Eldrick Thorne. The diary revealed a man consumed by obsession. Thorne had devoted his life to vanishing magic, seeking to render himself and his possessions untouchable by time itself. His words spoke of endless experiments, of spells that bent reality until it frayed. Harry turned the pages, his scar prickling faintly, while Ron leaned over his shoulder, the orb's light casting shadows across their faces. The final entry unveiled the truth. Thorne had succeeded. He crafted a spell to remove his vault from the fabric of time, a sanctuary beyond decay or discovery. But his triumph was his undoing. He miscalculated, erasing himself along with it, leaving no trace in the world above. Yet the vault's flickering presence hinted at something more, a flaw in his perfect plan. As they read, the air thickened and a chill crept up their spines. Strange whispers echoed through the vault, soft and disjointed, like fragments of a voice scattered across centuries. Shadows twisted along the walls, stretching and curling in ways that defied the torchlight. Harry's grip tightened on his wand, his instincts screaming that something or someone remained. The diary slipped from his hands, its pages fluttering as if caught by an unseen wind. Ron stumbled back, his eyes wide as the shadows coalesced into a vague humanoid shape, Eldrick Thorne or what was left of him. Not a ghost, not a memory but a fragment of consciousness, trapped outside time by his own spell, alive yet not truly there. The vault pulsed, its edges sharpening as if waking from a long slumber. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a force tugged at them, pulling them toward the vault's center. Harry's cloak billowed, his boots sliding against the stone, while Ron grabbed a rusted sconce, his knuckles white. Thorne's spell was alive, hungry, seeking to claim more victims to join its timeless prison. Ron acted first, his wand slashing through the air, a dispelling charm bursting forth in a flare of blue light. The whispers faltered, the shadows recoiling, but the pull only weakened, not broke. Harry raised his own wand, his voice steady in his mind as he channeled a surge of magic into a single, powerful finite incantatum. The spell rippled outward, clashing with the vault's enchantment, unraveling its grip thread by thread. The vault shuddered violently, its walls cracking as the magic holding it together frayed. Harry and Ron braced themselves, their wands still raised as the shadows swirled into a final desperate form, Thorn's silhouette, reaching out with skeletal hands. Then, with a deafening crack, the vault collapsed inward, folding into itself like parchment crumpling in a fist. A burst of dust and light erupted, forcing them to shield their eyes. When the haze cleared, the passage was empty, the vault gone, not vanished this time but destroyed. Thorn's whispers faded into silence, his fragmented existence snuffed out at last, lost to the void he had sought to master. They emerged into Gringotts' upper halls, dust clinging to their clothes, the orb in Ron's hand now dark and lifeless. The goblins gathered around, their sharp eyes glinting with reluctant gratitude. A small chest of galleons appeared at their feet, a reward for their efforts, though the goblins offered no ceremony, only a curt nod before returning to their ledgers. Ron pocketed a few coins with a grin, brushing soot from his hair, while Harry lingered, staring at the spot where the tunnel had been. The weight of the encounter settled over him, a quiet unease he couldn't shake. Thorn's ambition, his erasure from time, it felt like a warning, a reminder of magic's cost when pushed too far. The sun was high as they stepped into Diagon Alley, the bustle of shoppers a stark contrast to the stillness below. Ron clapped Harry on the shoulder, his easy stride already turning toward the leaky cauldron, but Harry paused, his gaze distant. The vault was gone, its secrets buried forever, yet the experience lingered like a shadow at the edge of his thoughts. Some things he realized were meant to stay forgotten, lost to time not by spell but by choice. With a final glance at Gringotts' gleaming facade, he turned to follow Ron, the echoes of the vanishing vault fading into the hum of the living world. The fifth story. The Ravenclaw Riddle. The bronze eagle knocker gleamed faintly in the torchlight outside the Ravenclaw common room, its eyes glinting with an unsettling stillness. A crisp autumn evening had settled over Hogwarts, the castle's towers piercing a sky streaked with twilight hues. Inside those walls, a mystery had begun to unfold. A new first-year student, small and wide-eyed, stood before the entrance, trembling as the eagle posed a riddle unlike any heard before. Its words twisted through the air, sharp and enigmatic, a question so strange and impenetrable that no answer seemed to fit. The knocker fell silent, unyielding, and the door remained shut. Hours passed, then days, and the child was locked out indefinitely, a solitary figure in the corridor, shivering beneath a borrowed cloak. Word spread swiftly through Ravenclaw Tower. Older students gathered, their curiosity piqued, and one by one they tried their hand at the riddle. Each attempt met the same fate, the eagle's head tilted, its beak clicked shut, and the door refused to budge. Even the most brilliant minds faltered, their confidence crumbling. The oldest professors were summoned, Filius Flitwick among them, his white hair tousled as he scratched his chin in bewilderment. The archives of Hogwarts held no record of such a question, no hint of its origin or solution. The tower, once a haven of wit and wisdom, became a fortress sealed against its own, its inhabitants trapped within or exiled without. Among them, Cho Chang and Terry Boot felt the stir of responsibility, their Ravenclaw pride urging them to act. Cho stood at the corridor's edge, her dark hair catching the flicker of torchlight, her graceful poise masking a restless determination. Terry lingered nearby, his wiry frame hunched over a crumpled parchment, his sharp mind already racing. They had been students during darker times, survivors of war and loss, and this puzzle called to them like a challenge from the past. Together they turned from the locked entrance and descended into the depths of Ravenclaw's library, a vast chamber tucked beneath the tower, its shelves groaning under centuries of scrolls and tomes. Dust motes danced in the air as they pored over ancient texts, their fingers tracing faded ink, seeking any clue to the riddle's source. Hours blurred into days, the outside world forgotten as they chased whispers of Rowena Ravenclaw herself. Their search unearthed a brittle manuscript, its pages bound in silver thread, hidden behind a false panel in the library's oldest alcove. The script was Rowena's own, elegant and precise, detailing an enchantment lost to time. The riddle was no mere test of intellect, it was a fail-safe, woven into the tower's magic by its founder. Designed to seal Ravenclaw's sanctuary in times of great peril, it would activate only when a threat loomed, locking away her knowledge until her descendants proved their worth. Cho's breath caught as she turned the page, her eyes tracing a sketch of the eagle knocker, its bronze wings etched with runes of protection. Terry's brow furrowed, his mind piecing together the implications. Something had triggered this ancient safeguard, but what? And why now, in an era of fragile peace? The manuscript offered no clear enemy, only riddles within riddles, yet it hinted at a solution buried in Rowena's intent. The pair returned to the entrance, the first-year student still waiting, her small face pale but hopeful. The eagle stirred as they approached, its voice resonating once more with the impossible question. Cho closed her eyes, letting the words sink in while Terry paced, his boots scuffing the stone floor. The riddle twisted through their thoughts, elusive, layered, a test not of facts but of understanding. Days of research coalesced into a single fleeting insight. The answer lay not in knowledge alone, but in the essence of Ravenclaw, wit, courage, and the pursuit of truth. Together they crafted a response, a phrase born of intuition and legacy, and cast it into the air with quiet resolve. The eagle's eyes flashed, its wings trembling as the tower itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a soft creak, the door swung inward but not to the common room. A shimmering mist filled the archway, and from it emerged a figure draped in sapphire robes, her hair cascading like a river of midnight. Rowena Ravenclaw stood before them, not flesh but memory, her presence woven into the enchantment. Her gaze was piercing, her features carved with timeless wisdom, and the air thrummed with her power. The tower's walls faded, replaced by a vision of Hogwarts centuries past, its spires gleaming under a younger sky. Rowena's memory spoke through the silence, her warning clear. An ancient magical force, dormant for ages, stirred once more. The fail-safe had awakened to test her lineage, to ensure they remained worthy of her gifts. Cho and Terry stood transfixed, the weight of her words settling over them. The riddle's answer had unlocked the truth, proving their mettle, not just as students, but as heirs to Ravenclaw's legacy. The mist pulsed, and Rowena's image began to fade, her stern expression softening into something like approval. With a final shimmer, she vanished, and the entrance reformed, the familiar spiral staircase of the common room spiraling upward once more. The eagle knocker settled into stillness, its riddle spent, its purpose fulfilled. The first-year student stepped forward, her small hand brushing the doorframe, and crossed the threshold at last, her exile ended. The tower hummed with life again, its occupants spilling back into their routines, the air lighter than before. Cho lingered at the entrance, her fingers tracing the bronze eagle, a quiet pride warming her chest. Terry leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, not with wands or spells, but with the sharpness of their minds. Yet Rowena's warning lingered, a shadow on the horizon, a force yet to reveal itself. The tower stood open, its secrets safe for now, but the echo of her memory whispered through the stones, a reminder that wisdom's price was vigilance. As night fell over Hogwarts, the stars reflected in the tower's windows, and Ravenclaw's legacy endured, tested and true. The sixth story. The Forbidden Forest's new resident. The Forbidden Forest loomed dark and wild beyond Hogwarts grounds, its gnarled branches swaying in a restless wind. On a foggy morning in early spring, Rubeus Hagrid trudged through the undergrowth, his massive boots sinking into the damp earth, his lantern casting a warm glow against the mist. The half-giant's bearded face creased with curiosity as he paused, his sharp eyes catching a flicker of movement, something unseen, yet undeniably there. He reached out, his calloused hand brushing the air, and for a fleeting moment, a creature shimmered into view. It resembled a thestral, its skeletal frame draped in leathery skin, but this was no ordinary beast. Even Hagrid, who had witnessed death and cared for thestrals aplenty, couldn't see it without touch. When his hand pulled away, it vanished again, swallowed by invisibility, a mystery that shouldn't exist. Hagrid's heart thudded with a mix of awe and unease. He lumbered back to his hut, the forest whispering behind him, and sought out Neville Longbottom. The young herbology professor stood in the Hogwarts greenhouses, his sleeves rolled up, dirt streaking his hands as he tended to a shivering Flutterby bush. Neville's round face lit with interest as Hagrid described the creature, his quiet courage stirring at the prospect of a puzzle rooted in the natural world. Together they returned to the forest, Hagrid's lantern swinging at his side, Neville clutching a worn notebook and a sprig of protective gillyweed. The air grew thick as they ventured deeper, the trees closing in, their branches clawing at the sky. The creature appeared again when Hagrid's hand brushed its flank, its form flickering into sight, gaunt and graceful, its eyes glowing faintly before it faded once more. Neville squinted, his brow furrowing, unable to glimpse it even as death's shadow lingered in his own past. The pair pressed on, following a trail of trampled moss and snapped twigs, until they stumbled into an abandoned glade. At its center, old stone runes glowed dimly, half buried in the soil, their edges worn by time. Neville knelt, his fingers tracing the carvings, while Hagrid stood watch, his massive frame a shield against the forest's unseen eyes. The runes pulsed faintly, their magic ancient and strange, tied to the creature that haunted this place. Neville opened his notebook, sketching the symbols as Hagrid paced, his breath puffing in the cool air. The creature lingered near, its presence felt rather than seen, a shadow that slipped from memory the moment attention wavered. Hours passed as they pieced together the glade's secret, the runes revealing a story etched in stone. This beast was the last of its kind, a forgotten guardian, bound by a spell so potent it erased it from history each time it was unobserved. Its purpose was tied to something buried beneath Hogwarts, a treasure or terror hidden long ago. But the magic cloaking it was fraying, its invisibility faltering under the weight of centuries, leaving it vulnerable and alone. The glade trembled as dusk fell, the runes flickering like dying embers. Hagrid's hand rested on the creature again, its form shimmering briefly, its head dipping as if in recognition. Neville's mind raced, his herbologist's instincts blending with a Gryffindor's resolve. They needed help, and the forest offered an answer. Hooves crunched through the underbrush, and Firenze emerged, the centaur's silvery mane catching the fading light. His starry eyes met theirs, his presence calm yet commanding, a bridge between human and wild. He approached the runes, his hooves tracing their edges, and his gaze turned skyward, reading truths in the constellations above. The Guardian, he revealed, protected a secret vault beneath the castle, its magic tied to Hogwarts' very foundation. Firenze's knowledge illuminated the path forward. The Guardian's spell was fading because the runes had weakened, their power leaching into the earth. If left unchecked, the creature would vanish forever, and whatever it guarded might rise unopposed. Hagrid's hands dug into the soil, unearthing more stones, while Neville gathered rare herbs from his satchel, moondew and dittany, to bolster the enchantment. Together they worked under Firenze's guidance, the centaur's steady presence grounding their efforts. Hagrid carved fresh lines into the runes, his strength etching magic back into stone, while Neville infused them with a potion that glowed silver in the moonlight. The air hummed, the glade pulsing with renewed energy as the spell took hold. The creature shimmered into view one final time, its form solidifying as Hagrid's hand rested on its flank. Its eyes met his, a silent gratitude flickering within, before it faded once more, this time by design, not decay. The runes flared brightly, then dimmed, their purpose restored. The Guardian resumed its unseen watch, its existence secured beyond memory's grasp. Firenze bowed his head, his hooves retreating into the shadows, leaving the glade silent but alive. Hagrid wiped his brow, a grin breaking through his beard, while Neville tucked his notebook away, his quiet pride evident in the set of his shoulders. They trudged back through the forest, the lantern swinging low, its light cutting through the mist. Hogwarts loomed ahead, its windows aglow, oblivious to the secret preserved beneath its stones. Hagrid paused at the forest's edge, his gaze lingering on the trees, a flicker of wonder in his eyes. Neville adjusted his satchel, the weight of their task settling into a comfortable resolve. The forgotten Guardian remained, invisible and eternal, its duty upheld by their hands. As night deepened, the forest whispered its approval and the castle stood firm, its mysteries safe for another day. The Seventh Story. The House Elf Who Knew Too Much. The kitchens of Hogwarts buzzed with warmth and clatter on a rainy afternoon, the scent of roasting potatoes and fresh bread wafting through the air. House elves darted between tables, their small hands deftly wielding ladles and trays, their large eyes gleaming with purpose. Among them moved Winky, a wiry elf with a tattered tea towel draped over her shoulders, once a friend to Dobby and now a fixture in the castle's bustling underbelly. But today something was amiss. Winky paused mid-task, her ears twitching, her voice dropping to a whisper as she muttered about secrets buried beneath the kitchens. Her words drifted to the ears of a passing student, who raised an eyebrow in curiosity. When pressed, Winky's eyes widened in panic, her memory seeming to slip away like water through fingers, and she fell silent, refusing to speak again. Ron Weasley heard the tale later that evening in the Gryffindor common room, sprawled across an armchair, a half-eaten pumpkin pasty in hand. His freckled face creased with intrigue. House elves weren't known for odd behavior, not like this. The war had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about Winky's whispers tugged at him. The next morning he slipped away from breakfast, his lanky frame ducking through the portrait hole, and made his way to the kitchens. Tickling the pair on the hidden painting, he stepped into the steamy chaos below, his blue eyes scanning for Winky. She scurried past, avoiding his gaze, her movements jittery as if pulled by an unseen thread. Ron followed, his boots scuffing the stone floor, determined to unravel the mystery. Winky's path led him beyond the ovens and pantries, to a shadowed corner where a loose flagstone wobbled underfoot. Ron knelt, his wand glowing faintly as he pried it up, revealing a narrow tunnel plunging into darkness. The air within was cool and musty, thick with the weight of centuries. He squeezed through, his broad shoulders scraping the walls, and descended into the depths of Hogwarts, the kitchen's warmth fading behind him. The tunnel twisted and turned, its stones etched with faint carvings, symbols he vaguely recognized from history of magic lessons he'd half-slept through. At its end, a heavy oak door loomed, its surface worn but sturdy, unmarked by time. With a push, it creaked open, unveiling an ancient chamber lit by a soft, eerie glow. The room was vast, its walls lined with faded tapestries depicting the Hogwarts founders, Godric Gryffindor's bold stance, Helga Hufflepuff's gentle smile, Rowena Ravenclaw's piercing gaze, and Salazar Slytherin's shadowed smirk. In the center rested a stone pedestal, cradling a parchment that shimmered with golden light. Ron approached, his wand raised, the air humming with old magic. The parchment was a contract, its ink still vibrant despite the years, detailing a pact forged by the founders. It bound house elves to Hogwarts, their service woven into the castle's very foundation, but the terms were obscured, veiled by a spell that pulsed faintly, as if straining against its own decay. Winky's whispers made sense now. She'd overheard a fragment of this secret, a truth she was never meant to know. The chamber trembled slightly, dust sifting from the ceiling, and Ron's heart quickened. He traced the parchment's edges, his fingers brushing the enchanted ink. The spell hiding the contract was unraveling, its protective magic fraying after centuries of silence. Winky's strange behavior, the whispers, the sudden forgetting, was a symptom of this breach, her mind brushing against knowledge the enchantment forbade. Ron's thoughts raced, piecing together the implications. If the spell collapsed entirely, the bond between Hogwarts and its elves might shatter, upending a relationship that had endured since the castle's birth. Yet the contract's full terms remained hidden, a mystery too vast to unravel in this shadowed place. Ron stepped back, his wand steady in his grip, his mind wrestling with the choice ahead. The Founder's magic was powerful but not infallible, time had weakened it, and Winky's breach was proof of its fragility. He could let it break, exposing the secret to all, or reinforce it, preserving the status quo. The chamber's glow pulsed, urging action, and Ron's resolve hardened. He raised his wand, drawing on years of spellwork honed through danger and friendship. A soft light spilled from its tip, weaving into the parchment's enchantment, threading new strength into old magic. The air steadied, the trembling ceased, and the golden shimmer stabilized, sealing the contract once more. The pedestal sank into the floor, the chamber sealing itself as Ron retreated, the oak door groaning shut behind him. He climbed back through the tunnel, his shoulders aching, and emerged into the kitchens, where Winky stood frozen, her eyes blank but calm. She resumed her work without a glance, the whispers gone, her mind eased by the restored spell. Ron replaced the flagstone, his hands steady, and slipped out unnoticed, the clatter of pots masking his exit. The castle above hummed with life, oblivious to the secret preserved below, its oldest pact safe in silence. Later, Ron sat by the Gryffindor fire, his legs stretched toward the hearth, a faint frown tugging at his lips. The house elves' bond endured, their service unbroken, but the weight of the unknown lingered. What had the founders hidden in those terms? What price had been paid? He shook his head, brushing crumbs from his shirt, and let the questions fade. The kitchens bustled on, Winky among the throng, her tea towel swaying as she worked. Hogwarts stood firm, its mysteries intact, and Ron settled into the warmth, the echo of the chamber buried deep beneath the castle's heart. The Eighth Story. The Whispering Wands. A faint chill settled over Hogwarts as the first leaves of autumn drifted across the castle grounds. The corridors buzzed with the usual hum of student life, but beneath the chatter lay an undercurrent of unease. Wands, those trusted extensions of wizarding will, had begun to falter. Spells flickered weakly, sparks fizzled into nothing, and some wands refused to cast at all, lying dormant in their owners' hands. Stranger still, a few students reported hearing whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that rose from the wood when they gripped their wands tightly. Harry Potter noticed it first in the Great Hall, his holly wand trembling as he summoned a goblet, the motion sluggish, a faint hum brushing his ears. Hermione Granger felt it too, her vine wand sparking erratically during a simple charm, a whisper curling through her mind like a forgotten memory. The anomaly spread swiftly, wands misfiring in classrooms and courtyards, their magic unraveling like a frayed thread. Harry stood in the Gryffindor common room, his green eyes narrowing as he tested his wand again, its response sluggish, its whispers elusive. Hermione paced nearby, her bushy hair bouncing with each step, a stack of books already tucked under her arm. They needed answers, and their search led them beyond Hogwarts walls to Diagon Alley, where the dusty windows of Ollivander's wand shop glowed faintly in the dusk. The old wandmaker emerged from the shadows, his silvery eyes wide with a mix of fascination and dread. He examined Harry's wand, his gnarled fingers trembling, and confirmed what they feared. Wands carried traces of their owner's magic, but they were never meant to speak. Something was deeply wrong. Back at Hogwarts, Hermione dove into the library, her fingers flipping through ancient texts on wand lore, while Harry paced the restricted section, his wand glowing faintly in the dim light. Hours melted away as they unearthed references to an echo binding, a rare phenomenon where an ancient magical source disrupted the harmony of enchanted objects. The whispers, the misfires, it all pointed to a disturbance rippling through the wand's very essence. Hermione's sharp mind traced the clues, her notes sprawling across parchment, until a pattern emerged. The disruptions grew stronger near the Forbidden Forest, a wild expanse where the castle's magic intertwined with older, untamed forces. Harry grabbed his cloak, Hermione her satchel, and together they ventured into the woods, the air thick with mist and mystery. The forest loomed dark and tangled, its branches creaking under an unseen weight. Harry's wand pulsed faintly, guiding them deeper, while Hermione scanned the ground, her keen eyes catching glints of magical residue. They reached a clearing where an ancient tree towered, its bark gnarled and silvered, its roots sprawling like veins beneath the earth. This was no ordinary tree, its wood resonated with a familiar power, a primal source of the wands crafted centuries ago by artisans like Ollivander. The whispers grew louder here, a chorus of faint voices rising from their wands, as if the tree itself was calling out. Harry knelt, his hand brushing the soil, and felt a tremor, a disturbance buried deep, its energy seeping into Hogwarts' foundation. Hermione unfurled a map of the forest, her wand illuminating parchment borrowed from Professor Flitwick's archives. The tree's roots stretched toward the castle, entwined with its magic, amplifying the disruption. Back in the library, they dug through records of wand-making history, their eyes bleary but determined. A dusty tome revealed the truth. Centuries ago, a wizard named Corvus Eldrin had sought to forge an unbreakable wand, an ambition born of hubris. He buried a magical artifact, a fragment of an ancient staff, beneath this very tree, believing its power would infuse the wood with invincibility. Instead, the artifact festered, its magic leaching into the earth, corrupting the balance of wandcraft over generations. The whispers were its echo, stirring the wands to life. The tree's roots pulsed as Harry and Hermione returned, their wands trembling in their hands. The soil beneath was warm, alive with the artifact's energy, and the whispers swelled into a low, mournful hum. Harry dug with his hands, dirt caking his fingers, while Hermione cast protective charms, her wand sparking faintly as she reinforced the air around them. Deeper they went, until a glint of metal emerged, a shard of blackened wood, etched with runes, radiating a cold, restless power. This was the staff fragment, its magic wild and unbound, a relic of Eldrin's failed dream. Harry lifted it carefully, the whispers peeking into a sharp wail before fading, the wands in their hands steadying at last. The artifact couldn't remain at Hogwarts, its power was too volatile, its influence too great. Harry and Hermione apparat to London, the shard wrapped in a charmed cloth, and descended into the Department of Mysteries. The unspeakables received it in silence, their hooded figures vanishing into the shadowed halls, sealing it behind wards no one could breach. Back at the castle, the wands awoke fully, spells flaring with their usual brilliance, the whispers gone as if they'd never been. Harry stood on the Gryffindor Tower balcony, his holly wand warm in his grip, while Hermione sat in the library, her vine wand resting beside a closed book, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The great hall buzzed with life once more, students casting charms without a hitch, the castle's rhythm restored. Harry leaned against the balcony railing, his gaze drifting to the forbidden forest, where the ancient tree stood silent, its roots calm beneath the earth. Hermione tucked her notes away, her mind already turning to the next question, though a quiet satisfaction lingered in her posture. The wands of Hogwarts were whole again, their magic balanced, the artifacts' corruption locked away. As night fell, the castle glowed under a starry sky, its secrets safe, its wands whispering no more, only the wind rustling through the trees carried a faint echo of the past, lost to time. The Ninth Story. The Curse of the Midnight Bell. The ancient stones of Hogwarts glowed faintly under a waxing moon, their edges softened by centuries of wind and rain. A stillness cloaked the castle as night deepened, the usual rustle of owls and creak of portraits hushed beneath an unseen weight. Then as the clock tower's hands aligned at midnight, a low resonant toll shuddered through the walls, a sound rich and mournful, like the cry of a forgotten soul. No bell existed in Hogwarts records, no chime known to its inhabitants, yet it rang night after night, piercing the silence with relentless precision. Students stirred in their dormitories, their dreams warping into strange vivid scenes, cloaked figures wandering misty fields, hands outstretched in silent plea, and a whispered phrase that clung to their waking minds, "The debt must be paid." Harry Potter jolted awake in the Gryffindor Tower, his scar prickling faintly, his breath fogging in the cool air. Beside him, Ron Weasley mumbled groggily, his red hair tousled, his freckled face creased with unease as he rubbed sleep from his eyes. The bell's echo lingered, a vibration felt in their bones, and Harry swung his legs over the bed's edge, his wand already in hand. Ron sat up, blinking blearily, his usual grumble silenced by the weight of the sound. They weren't alone. Across the dormitory, heads lifted from pillows, eyes wide with confusion. The chime wasn't loud, not deafening, but it carried a presence, a pull that refused to be ignored, as if the castle itself mourned through its stones. Days passed, and the midnight toll became a ritual, its mystery deepening with each ring. Breakfast in the great hall buzzed with whispers, students recounting their dreams, the same haunting phrase threading through every tale. Harry lingered over his toast, his green eyes scanning the enchanted ceiling, while Ron shoveled sausages onto his plate, his appetite undimmed but his brow furrowed. The professors offered no answers. Minerva McGonagall flipped through ancient ledgers in her office, her lips pursed, finding no mention of a bell, while Phileas Flitwick muttered about lost enchantments, his wand tapping absently. Even the house elves, flitting through the kitchens, shook their heads, their large eyes blank with ignorance. Yet the chime persisted, a call Harry couldn't shake, stirring the instincts that had guided him through darker times. With Ron at his side, Harry resolved to trace the sound, their cloaks swishing as they slipped through the castle's shadowed halls. The first night, they wandered the astronomy tower, the wind whipping at their hair, but the toll seemed to drift from below. The next, they prowled the dungeons, the damp air clinging to their skin, only for the echo to rise above them. Ron kicked a loose stone in frustration, his breath puffing in the torchlight, while Harry tilted his head, listening, his wand glowing faintly. The sound defied logic, shifting with the castle's whims, a phantom woven into its magic. Sleep eluded them, their days blurring into a restless hunt, until one midnight as the bell rang anew, Harry caught a tremor in the air, a faint pulse guiding them toward the heart of the moving staircases. The staircases groaned and shifted, their wooden steps clattering as Harry and Ron navigated their restless dance. Between two platforms, a sliver of stone shimmered, an illusion rippling like water in the torchlight. Harry pressed his hand against it, the surface yielding, and they slipped through into a narrow corridor untouched by time. The air grew colder, heavier, as they climbed a crumbling spiral stair, its steps worn smooth by forgotten feet. At the top stood an abandoned bell tower, its walls streaked with moss, its ceiling open to a starless sky. In the center hung a cracked ancient bell, its bronze surface dulled by age, its edges etched with inscriptions, names, dates and promises scrawled in a script that twisted like vines. Dust lay thick on the floor, undisturbed for centuries, yet the bell swayed gently, tolling without touch, its chime a lament from the depths of history. Harry approached, his fingers brushing the carvings, the metal cool and faintly alive under his touch. The inscription spoke of wizarding debts, oaths sworn in desperation, bonds sealed with magic, then broken in silence. Ron circled the tower, his wand casting long shadows, his practical mind wrestling with the weight of the past. The bell's purpose eluded them, its toll a riddle without form, until they sought the castle's oldest voices. The Grey Lady drifted near the Ravenclaw Tower, her translucent form shimmering, her eyes distant as she recalled whispers of betrayal. Nearly headless Nick floated by the Gryffindor fireplace, his head wobbling as he recounted tales of exile and war. From their fragmented memories emerged a truth. Centuries ago, Hogwarts had opened its gates to a band of wizards fleeing persecution, promising sanctuary under its enchanted roof. When war ravaged the land, resources dwindled, and the castle turned them away, the vow shattered. The bell, forged in secret by those forsaken, tolled as a curse, a reminder of the debt left unpaid. The dreams flooding the castle were echoes of those lost souls, their grievance seeping into Hogwarts' magic, stirring its conscience. Harry stood beneath the bell, his cloak billowing in a sudden draft, his jaw set with determination. Ron leaned against the wall, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his blue eyes tracing the inscriptions with reluctant awe. They couldn't undo the past, but they could mend its wound. Days of research followed, piles of dusty tomes littered the Gryffindor common room, their pages yellowed and brittle. Harry traced bloodlines through genealogies, his quill scratching late into the night, while Ron flipped through maps, his yawns stifled by stubborn resolve. Their efforts pointed beyond the castle, to a windswept village nestled in the moors, where a lone descendant of the exiled wizards lingered, an elderly witch named Elara Vane, her silver hair braided tightly, her hands gnarled by time, her eyes sharp with the weight of her kin's forgotten story. The journey took them across rugged hills, the wind howling as they apparat to Elara's doorstep. Her cottage stood weathered and small, its walls lined with relics, faded cloaks, cracked wands, tokens of a lineage cast aside. Harry and Ron carried no treasure, no grand restitution, only an offer born of intent, a symbolic place of honor at Hogwarts, a seat at the Great Hall's table where her ancestors had been denied. Elara's fingers brushed a locket on her shelf, her gaze softening, a flicker of peace breaking through years of quiet bitterness. She accepted, her posture straightening, a burden lifted after generations of silence. That night, they returned to the tower, the air thick with anticipation, the castle's stones humming faintly as midnight neared. The clock struck 12 and the bell tolled one final time, its chime clear and resonant, cutting through the night like a blade. Harry stood beneath it, his wand raised, while Ron watched from the stair, his breath held. The sound swelled, then softened, the bell's cracks glinting in the moonlight as it stilled, its sway ceasing at last. A ripple of magic pulsed outward, warm and fleeting, and the tower trembled, its walls fading into mist. The illusion dissolved, the staircases reclaiming the space, leaving no trace of the bell or its chamber. Harry lowered his wand, a quiet relief washing over him, while Ron ran a hand through his hair, a grin breaking through his exhaustion. The dream stopped that night, students waking to silence, their sleep untroubled, the whispered phrase, "The debt must be paid,"